I'm going to be moving right along with my Browns positional preview series. This time we're going to be looking at Cleveland's running back room. This is a room that's going to be a bit different as the Browns will have to adjust to life without D'Ernest Johnson and Kareem Hunt. D'Ernest Johnson signing a one-year contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and while Kareem Hunt is still a free agent and could technically sign back with Cleveland, it seems like neither party is interested in a reunion of any kind in this offseason. So there's going to be some new roles to fill for some new players to step up into them. Although something that won't change is the role that Nick Chubb will play on the offense. He had another phenomenal year last season. In 17 games played, he had 1,525 yards on 302 attempts, which is just a smidge more than 5 yards per attempt, which is right in line with his career average. 12 rushing touchdowns as well. He had 239 receiving yards on 27 receptions and a catching touchdown to go along with that. He is entering the third year of his 4-year contract extension he signed with the Browns, and this year he will carry the second highest running back cap hit at $14.85 million. To me, Nick Chubb has pretty much nothing to prove this offseason that he hasn't already shown that he is capable of in a Cleveland Browns uniform. Just something that's a testament to how good he is, where Nick Chubb got the 4th most carries in the NFL among running backs, and there are many fans, myself included actually, that were clamoring about just how underutilized he was. My gripe wasn't necessarily the sheer amount or lack thereof that he was getting. It was more of, it seemed like the Browns would go away from the running game and away from Nick Chubb in crucial moments where it seems like him, using him as a weapon would make sense, but they would just go away from it in favor of a more flaccid passing game, which didn't really, that I guess that's more of a conversation for a different time, but I feel like that is more where some of the talks about Nick Chubb being underutilized come from. Isn't necessarily the volume of his carries, but when he is and isn't used. I think the question for Nick Chubb isn't, it isn't going to be will he be impactful for the Browns. It's going to be how much of a huge positive impact will Nick Chubb have on this team, especially with some of the upgrades at wide receiver. Maybe the Browns are looking to more have a more dangerous pass game than they do with a run game. So maybe Nick Chubb his role is maybe a little diminished, but I do feel like if Nick Chubb is on the field, he will have a great impact on an opposing team's defenses. Then we're going to move on to Jerome Ford, who the organization definitely seems to be molding into the second running back in the organization. This is his 2nd year as a 5th-round pick from the University of Cincinnati. In his rookie season, he mostly contributed to the team as a kickoff returner, although you think with the Browns re-signing Jakeem Grant, he probably won't be doing that. He'll probably be focusing more on being a pure running back. He had 8 carries last season for 12 yards, no receptions. He did have some pretty nifty returns that I think were encouraging for him as a runner. He did have a lot of good moments last preseason where he did show that he could power some people through. He had pretty good speed in some preseason games and in camp. So there is some precedent that the organization has to put some faith in him there. The organization definitely thinks he is ready to step into that backup running back role under Nick Chubb. And Stump Mitchell, I think that he had, his coaching tenure with the Browns has been pretty good. We saw what he's gotten out of guys like D'Ernest Johnson and running backs further down in the depth chart before. I guess now that, you could argue that any running backs coach would be good with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt as that 1-2 punch. I guess we'll see how effective Stump Mitchell's coaching really is. I don't have any doubts about it, but I guess if you were to poke holes in Stump Mitchell as a coach, I guess you could say that maybe he's been dealing with a stacked running back room. But again, with the flashes Jerome Ford showed, I feel like he's going to be just fine, and Stump Mitchell is doing a bang-up job with the room so far. Now we're going to talk about Demetric Felton. He's entering his 3rd season. He's a 6th-round pick out of UCLA. He's been mostly seen as a wide receiver and running back hybrid in his time with Cleveland. Honestly, with the additions they've made at wide receiver, I don't really see him cracking the 53-man roster as a wide receiver, and if he does, he would be very far down in the depth chart. His role was really diminished last season after having a decent amount of snaps in his rookie year. In his 2nd year, he didn't really do much of anything. Barely any rushing attempts or receptions. He did get some looks as a punt returner, but again, with the Jakeem Grant injury, it does seem like he was more there because they had to have somebody return punts rather than somebody they actually had a supreme amount of confidence in. it's just a case where Demetric Felton does seem like he's a very versatile kind of player. Again, they've put him as a wide receiver, a running back, a punt returner, so he can do a lot of things, but versatile, but with little to no impact so far in his early season. I think I remember his second game of his career, he had a touchdown catch against the Houston Texans. That in the game where Baker Mayfield got hurt trying to tackle some guy, but he had that touchdown catch on a screen play, I believe. Besides that, I can't really remember any Demetric Felton highlights that in his time in Cleveland. But Andrew Berry, definitely a guy who likes his picks. The organization has definitely given a lot of leeway to the draft picks before, so I wouldn't be surprised if he got another stab at another season with the Browns this year. Moving on to John Kelly. The Browns picked him up off of waivers from the Rams in 2020, and he's been a depth piece in the Cleveland organization ever since. Now, the Browns have waived him a number of times, whether it's getting him from the training camp roster to the practice squad or saving some cap space here and there, although no one has scooped him up from the Browns since Cleveland waived him. Or since Cleveland picked him up from waivers. He's been a depth piece, gotten some snaps at the NFL level in emergency situations. There have been a couple times where Cleveland has ran into some COVID troubles in the past, or a couple injuries to a couple key running backs, and John Kelly's called up from the practice squad. And I've always thought that he's looked decent in the offseason training camps and in preseason games. It's just been a matter of that he would just get buried in the depth chart behind the more premier talent on the Browns team. I would love to see him now that both Ernest Johnson and Kareem Hunt are probably gone. We know Ernest Johnson is, but Kareem Hunt most definitely. I'd like to see him push for that third running back spot with Demetric Felton. I would really love to see Felton and John Kelly really have a competition for that spot and see who the better player is. And he is in a position that Stump Mitchell has said that he enjoys coaching for. I remember I watched a piece on Stump Mitchell where Stump basically said that he loves coaching the guys who are further down in the depth chart, guys like where Jerome Ford was last year and where John Kelly finds himself now, where he's fighting and scratching and clawing for a spot on that 53-man roster. And this season, again, with the departures of Ford and Hunt, I do believe that he has a legitimate shot at getting on that 53-man roster. This Browns team carried 4 running backs into the roster last season. If they follow that up with the same kind of trend, then John Kelly certainly has a fighter's chance at making the final roster. Now I'm going to be talking about some new faces that have been introduced to the Browns running back room, starting with Hassan Hall, an undrafted rookie free agent out of Georgia Tech, although he did spend most of his college career at Louisville. In his senior year, he had 521 yards on 116 attempts, which is about 4.5 yards per attempt, and 1 touchdown. Also contributed 165 receiving yards on 28 receptions for the Yellow Jackets. He has plenty of kickoff return experience, so the Browns could use him there, although he did have more of that in his time with Louisville than at Georgia Tech, so maybe he finds himself in a special teams role in a final 53-man roster. I don't really see a way he gets there as a pure running back. So if he makes the team, it's going to be because he can also slide over on special teams and get reps there. And last on the running back list is Nate McCrary. He's a guy who's been bouncing around practice squads for a couple years now. He only has 1 official NFL carry, and he lost a yard on that carry. And he has 2 total offensive snaps in his career, both of those with Baltimore in 2021. So he's the only player who I would be completely shocked to see survive the roster cuts. I feel like you could make arguments for the rest of the running backs. Not that all of them definitely will make the roster, but you could definitely make arguments for the rest of those guys. Nate McCrary, if he makes the team, it's just going to be because he has a ridiculous training camp in general. So let me know what you think about the Browns running back room down in the comments below. I think any running back room headlined by Nick Chubb is going to have a pretty decent outlook, but that's just me, I suppose. Thank you all for watching. You've made it this far into the video, and I will see you at the next one.